am going to be addressing the prospects and the idea of a Muslim Commonwealth this evening, and to do that, I would prefer to first have an overview of the global canvas, the global economic canvas as it does exist. We have a world with 183 plus nation states, and these nation states are predominantly carry with them natural resources or a commonwealth of nature that is meant to feed the world equitably. But the ground reality is a little different. The ground reality is that certain amount of countries, a handful, 2, 3, 4, 5 countries, are involved in creating an economic structure of the world such that the accessibility to this commonwealth of nature is being scavenged for their economic benefit and their economic gain, and at the detriment and cost of the global population of 7.6 billion who are left out in the cold. Now, on the one hand, this situation has evolved intensively over the last 150 years, and it has evolved into a situation where today we see distinctively two powers with their horns locked in being able to increase their footprint over the number of nation states that do exist. Without mincing words, let's identify them. You have China on the one hand, and you have the Americans and the Britishers on the other, with the European Union as their allies, which can be referred to the white man's club. What has happened over the years in this process of evolution is that China, because of its population and intensive ability for production, based on their ideology of communism, where the cost of money and material stands at zero, the labor input being extensive, their production, beyond any iota of doubt, has way exceeded the white man's club level of production. And therefore, the hold of the white man's club over the entire planet and the nation states that do exist has not only been diluted, it is now become regressive. That means the bite of their influence to be able to obtain the natural resources for their level of profitability has eroded. This is an interesting scenario because what they have done for their defense, these two warring countries, if you like, or unions, if you like, is as follows. China, to be able to keep its industrial production levels as is, and to intensify it by the acquisition of material technology or the advancement of material technology, has of late initiated the One Belt, One Road program, which is effectively providing infrastructural development to the nation states, but not on a philosophy of making them indebted, but on a philosophy of purchasing equities within them. And that guarantees the achievement of their objective. On the other hand, the White Man's Club are supporting, creating, perpetrating wars and this is published information, and are doling out printed paper to support the economies for their infrastructural development post-war devastations. So both have their plans in place to be able to have a larger economic footprint on the planet. And this is an undeniable truth which is not hidden in any way. This is published information, this is open, one can see it, feel it, and absolutely witness the effects of these two initiatives coming from the two different warring parties. Since we are located in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, a very deep concern that should inflict our thoughts is our survival and the effects this sort of brinkmanship will bring about for our people, for our land, for our economy, and for our existence. There have been efforts in the interim to validate and negotiate our place for survival by over-amplifying our geopolitical location. But in my personal opinion, it is a very lame, very important, very shallow approach to how we may, in the end analysis, be pushed to an agenda, a global agenda, by either of the parties or by both, to a status of insignificance. That's point one. And as we touch other points, we must bear in mind our position, our location, and our existence. The second point which I'd like to take up is from the historical and philosophical perspective about what the planet should have by way of a world order. We have seen that unipolar world order, that means there's one country which will rule the entire world, one government, will enslave the global population, the signs of which are very apparent. The desire and the objectives of this are plainly laid out, well published, well advertised. Then we have the second option of a bipolar world order, where you have two superpowers, and then they will end up doing exactly what is being done right now, have a larger footprint, in which case the global population becomes subject to excessive human right abuse, and their wealth given to them by nature gets scavenged without any tangible benefit for them for basic subsistence. The third option is, of course, a multipolar world order, and that has always seemed as a far-fetched dream when viewed from the political periscope. Not in too distant a past, we saw the existence of China, Soviet Union, the United States of America or Northern America, and the Europeans. And the intensity of grabbing the Commonwealth of nature from nation states was more intensive than it is perhaps today. Nation states were playing one superpower against the other to keep afloat economically. And they were forever compromising on the basis of their founding ideologies, particularly in Pakistan, where we were founded on the basis of the Islamic ideology, and that is the only thing we totally disregarded and threw out of the window in our battle of survival to keep all superpowers appeased so that we can get crumbs for sustaining a population which now stands at 221 million people. Let's take another point to consider. This unipolar world order and the multipolar world order or the bipolar world order can be attributed to two fundamental reasons. One is the act and the craft of colonialism, and the other, which stands in support of colonialism, has been the regional social management method of the rudimentary feudalism. So if I were a colonist and if I had to enter a certain territory, I would play one feudal up against the other, and to the detriment of the population, be able to capture the natural resources for pittance. Now this has been the history and the fundamental basis on which colonialism found light of the day. Had there been no feudal structures, there would have been no colonialism. So feudalism within and colonialism externally are responsible for upholding this grab and run philosophy which is being pursued by the world order or the conflict between the powers that be. Now, as a consequence of colonialism and a consequence of the economic structure that does plague the world, two things have happened. These are spillover effects which have come into existence. That the people who were robbing the natural resources of the world and are doing so presently have ample wealth at their disposal to keep themselves and their material high-tech way above others, which establishes their military supremacy and instills a fear amongst those who do not wish to comply. This material technology, legally viewed, is always supposed to be subject to, subservient to social high-tech. Social high-tech, in effect, really means the science of managing societies on the basis of equity and judicious dispensation of justice, be it material justice or social justice. Next point. It has become imperative, as a consequence of what I have narrated so far, that the far-fetched idea of a multipolar world order, which has been pushed away recurrently as a thought based on insanity, has to be pursued for legal reasons. That deprivation of the global population from the benefits of the Commonwealth of nature or natural resources cannot be ignored. And should it be ignored, then there is now a point, we are at a crossroad, where the overwhelming population of the world will see uprising and will make the perpetrators of the crime of robbing the world by depriving the majority of the population. We'll see a point where this population will completely take over the planet and leave the planet in a state which will be very chaotic without a plan to move forward. It is with this contingency in mind that we in Pakistan, and why Pakistan? Because we were founded in contemporary history as the first amongst the ideological countries that came, or nation states that came into being. We have to revert to our ideology for both reasons, social and economic. The destinations have to be identified and the roadmap there towards have to be clearly defined. The Arab world, among the Muslim countries of the world, the Arab world and the non-Arab world, don't see eye to eye on any unanimous step forward in so far as addressing a joint economic plan and or addressing a joint social canvas for the Muslim societies and Muslim people around the world. This dissent has also been engineered by the colonists over these 150 years, where you see factions identifying themselves with the Shia ideology, or you see factions identifying themselves with the Sunni ideology, whilst in effect there is no such difference in ideology because of the monotheistic nature of the religion they both follow. So the dissent has been accentuated and has been funded based on laws that relate to the individual, personal laws, personal attires, personal appearances. What they don't seem to challenge on either side of the divide economic and social crimes that are being committed on them together. Pakistan is a good ground to initiate this, carry it forward. And for a variety of reasons. It is not only the military strength, it is not only a very able population, it is not only the geopolitical location. Above all, it has got an evenly based potpourri of all sects that have been so engineered by the clergy in Islam to be present within the territorial limits of the nation state of Pakistan. It is therefore incumbent upon Pakistan to engineer a format for the social canvas such that it is reliant upon land which is least to the population, and it requires Pakistan to empower its population in fiscal terms. To achieve both these objectives and to make them exemplary for others to copy, we need the revaluation of the rupee to be linked to a tangible instead of the printed paper of any colonist or any warring faction on the planet. It is also incumbent upon us to manage our land on an equitable basis, whereby no particular institution of the state, no particular feudal living within should be able to access land without paying the cost for it. This will directly impact productivity, labor, and swift advancement of the economy. The economy of any country, any society, any nation state is based upon the freedom of the economic system. And unless that is freed from the captivity of any particular segment or part of the society or an institution of the state, turning the corner would remain near impossible. The prospects are immense, and I'll quote a few from the perspective of our ideology, the Islamic ideology. For instance, we take trade, foreign trade. Of all that we import, all that we export, is based on an international scale for tariffs and alien power, because that in essence, politically and economically, makes you subservient to the country whose paper you are you have taken as the benchmark for a value exchange. Then, let's take land management. Islam does not recognize nor promotes absentee landlordism. Which in essence would mean or would imply that you can't have freehold property. Property in use, be it for the purposes of industries, be it for the purposes of mining, tourism, agriculture, and or for purposes of residential use and commercial use, has to cost something that works as the taxes to uphold and sustain a government. So the way forward is a unilateral, the creation of unilateral creation of your own model so that it can be replicated. We cannot, absolutely cannot and must not divorce the ideology on the basis of which we were founded. Because we have done that for 70 years and we see today the results of our negligence and our indifference. We are essentially colonized and we are essentially subservient to the economic agenda and the social agenda of the West, of the white man's club, and soon it will be the Chinese agenda. We need a Muslim Commonwealth. And to sow the seeds of a Muslim Commonwealth, it is imperative that we create the model first in Pakistan, look within and see and make it available, showcase it for others to replicate. It will bring about, as it did for the European Union, as it did for Brexit, as it did for others, will bring about automatically the unification of currencies and the unification in the management of societies as they ought to be. In my proposal, in my book, The Current Chronicles, and my other booklet, recently published as the socio-economic destination for Pakistan, I have amply focused on the efficacy of urbanization, 100% urbanization in the country, at the front end of technology, and the freedom from the clutches of the bureaucracy, the freedom of trade and industry and investment in the country. This is the cornerstone, the bedrock on which we will find a way forward. My concluding remarks would therefore revolve around the empowering of the population, the fiscal empowering of the population, and to provide all vertical facilities which support and subsist them from the money which we create and invent ourselves, and by linking our foreign trade to that particular medium of exchange. If the medium of exchange is linked to a tangible like gold, this objective will be achieved almost overnight, and other Muslim countries around us, in the west and south of us, in the distant east of us, would have a popular push by their population to replicate the model, because people anywhere of any nation, state, any religion, any philosophy view their welfare first, and they view governance or the governors as managers of their national plan for their welfare. The only frightening thing which is happening today on the global scene is that instead of people's power, what is emerging are monolithic governments in these nation states. And these monolithic governments have a common agenda of enslaving their population. The final note on the message of Islam in support of what is being proposed here and now is that Islam has ordained resistance to all forms of oppression, be it economic, social, or any other. The tools, the mechanisms being used by the powers who want to lead the world are extremely deceptive, apparently. And it's always in the garb and visage of being extremely human-friendly, whether they are vaccines, or whether they are drugs, or whether it is social indoctrination, which is being pushed down the throat of the people, just as though we are chattel and furniture in the ownership of these pirates. I rest my case with a note that we will probably have another session on the prospects that we can joyfully look forward to for the populations of the Muslim world. Thank you.